Welcome to the ADNA Presents. Today we have a very special guest, Bill Sarine. Bill Sarine is a director and former executive with the Disney Motion Picture Group. Thank you for joining us, Bill Sarine.
Thanks for having me.
I'd love to figure out the best way to approach the absolute relevance of our conversation here. And I think the best way to start is to share that you and I know each other outside of professional engagements, of which we do work together and collaborate, that you and I have been friends for a while. And if I could put you on the spot, could you share what your experience was the first time that you heard about audio description? And basically, if in my dream world, we go from there to where you are today, because that is a fascinating story, in my opinion.
Yes. So you and I have known each other for longer than I care to admit in public or online, because that would give clues to my age,
Yes.
which I don't acknowledge either. So,
Uh,
and if you met me, you would recognize how immature I am in the first place. Uh, yeah. I mean, look, I've known you as a friend, first of all, but I've known you as an on-camera actor and a voice actor for a long time, basically the entire time I've known you. And the voice acting thing was the last 10 to 15 years, I feel like it was more of a that kind of became a more prominent part of your life. And I don't think I was up to speed on what parts of voice acting you're doing, because I'm friends with lots of actors. My brother's an actor, my sister-in-law's an actor, like lots of my friends are actors. A lot of them do voice. And so, I think I just put that all into the category of like, oh, I got it. You're doing some commercial stuff, and you've got a gig on a show doing voiceover, or or the occasional audiobook or something. And even the audiobook thing, I know you've done a bunch of those. I really wasn't, clued in on that process and how long that takes and how much of a grind that is in a bit. There's a lot of, it's sort of like you have to be super accurate and super fast at the same time, which is hard for anybody to do. But yeah, so that was all educational. And then, you had mentioned audio description to me, like you were doing that. And I think the first time you mentioned it, I just kind of like blew past it as like, oh, okay, that's another thing. Like it's on this list of voiceover work that people
uh,
do. And I probably fell into the same trap that I think anyone from, you know, the I guess studio world probably would, or the the motion picture world, where it's like, oh, okay, that's just like, it's like subtitling, right? It's another finishing thing that we do at the end, you know, and that's cool, you know, um, that we're doing that. I'm thinking that's a good idea that people are thinking of that, just like, oh, it's good that we have subtitles on for people who don't either are deaf or don't speak that language, want that. So I think I was guilty of that too. Like I just threw it in that category. And then I think the more you and I discussed that and the more I became, I guess, somewhat aware of, the everyday challenges of the blind and low vision community, um, in terms of absorbing entertainment, it changed my perspective because I'm very much, there's different types of filmmaking, and I grew up at Disney, so everything for me is sort of audience first. Some people are like art for art's sake, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But I always have this audience member in my mind, and it's all about either making them feel something or think something or experience something the way that I wanted them to. I'm trying to get a message across here and a story across here and a character point of view across here. And the idea that there was this whole segment of the audience that was not getting that experience all of a sudden jumped out at me, and I was thinking, finishing is not the right way to do this. Like the idea that you're backing into a time code, you know, that was meant for a different audience, means there's a whole audience that's just not, they're getting it, but they're not getting the full experience, you know. And so then you and I had some really fun discussions about that, because and like I will fully admit, like I think a percentage of that is a, getting rid of my own ignorance and prejudice in terms of like the way that I come at things. Um, but I do think there's tremendous opportunity there. And I think, just like any, like filmmaking is all about overcoming hurdles, you know, and you know, from beginning to end, from the scripting process through the last minute of post and in through distribution, there's just nonstop hurdles. But I think any competent filmmaker and any competent producer takes that as, an opportunity rather than, you know, like a roadblock. I think you just like, okay, this is the situation we have, and how do we use that to our advantage? How do we make it better? How do we, fold that in? Just like actors, if you're working with an actor, it's like, if they get stung by a bee in the middle of a scene, an acting teacher is likely going to tell you, great, fold that into your character. Like fold it in. How are you incorporating that? And so uh I think thinking about disability or thinking about accessibility, not as a requirement, but as an opportunity, I think that's the more interesting thing to me, you know? So the fact that something's accessible is like the bare minimum, you know? But the fact that something's immersive or enjoyable or impactful, I think that's the goal. I think that should be the goal. And I'm not saying I'm there or anybody else is there yet in terms of like how to fully do that. And some of that seems like a steep hill to climb, like if you're trying to change the whole industry. But I think there's a bit of a lead by example opportunity here too. But I think if you just take it from that audience point of view and just go, you know, I mean, if I was making a show for a 7-year-old, who lives in Maine, I would think, okay, let me get myself in that headspace. You know, what do 7-year-olds in Maine, or what are they really into? you know, and is that different from a 7-year-old in Seattle? Right? Are those two different points of view? And the more of a fine point you can put on that audience member, the better you're going to make sure that you're speaking to them and including them and creating entertainment for them. And I'm not saying that we have to create separate entertainment experiences for every single person individually, but I do believe that, there's probably a great way to make accessibility fun and immersive and, up the entertainment experience, like raise that bar. So there's a lot of things in a row for you.
Well, I'm hearing a lot of stuff that I think we can sync up on. For example, in your very specific example of the 7-year-old in Maine or Seattle, one of our challenges, which is among millions, is that our audiences are treated like children. So it just so happens that of all the random specifics that you chose a 7-year-old to make the comparison. The irony is that our audiences are sometimes treated like children, and from each aspect, whether it's the audio description that is, if you hear a gunshot and the audience hears an audio description person say he shoots the gun, it's redundant. We don't need that. Or if it's
Right.
extrapolating things that are either so obvious or so common that there is this kind of dumbing down that happens. And to your point, that there is this immersive or enjoyable, I think you used the word impactful too, for the goal. And if that goal is being accomplished, then our audiences are going to be respected for, in the sense of an adult, not adult film, you know what I'm saying, for good
Yeah.
gosh sakes, but in the sense of a non-kids show, that they're not going to be treated like kids. That your message here, what I'm hearing is that these opportunities that are there, I have to go on this tear, Bill. Like, we've got a very necessary FCC requirement of mandating broadcast television and cable, the top certain cable stations to have a certain amount of audio description provided plus film. It's like this is an
Mhm.
FCC mandate. But if you look at the 8,000 plus titles that have audio description for film and TV, only 5% of those 8,000 fall under that FCC mandate. So to your point, these companies know, whether it's behind the scenes negotiations or they don't want to get sued, we don't know, but we can say for certainty it's outside of the mandate. And these streaming services, which are predominantly the content for AD, are providing it. So there is an audience that is being started. It feels like it's starting to be recognized, but also from your point, it's like this bare minimum. It's like the way that you're speaking about audiences is respectful and for the making them feel something or experience something. And I'm curious if we could delve in a little bit deeper into your assumptions of what audio description when we first introduced, when you were first introduced to it to where you are now. Maybe we could get into a little bit more specifically as a filmmaker. I'm going to ask two parts of this question, and I'll make it super clear because I know I'm on like I'm so on a tear, Bill. I told you I'd do this. If an audience, if you are modeling as a filmmaker what AD can be, what is
Mhm.
something that you see an opportunity for? You were talking about backfilling into time codes, something like that. And then the second part is when it comes to sharing a message to other filmmakers, what is something that either you experience or you think other filmmakers can experience to understand the value of AD work? So those are the two questions. Does that make any
Yeah, sure, sure. Um, it does remind there's a the movie Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield.
there's
Um,
wow, here we go.
there's the you're like the professor in there who said when he's giving his exam to him, and he says, "I only have one question for you in 27 parts." Um, anyway,
Take that as
so
truth that it is.
um, I just watched that movie not too long ago. So um, you know, all movies like they finish up and they've got a total running time, right? TRT, and you see that all the time, right? But I had a conversation with a blind individual who, when we were just, I was talking with him about audio description, and he even said, even on movies with audio description, he'd be watching it with his wife who's sighted, and she'd hit pause to help fill in the blanks and describe more about the movie, and then hit play again. And that right there tells me that there's this gap, even in the factual sense, right? Even in the picture tells a thousand words sense, he's getting three of those words, and then there's 997 that he's not, right? So then there's somebody else who's now playing the part of filmmaker sitting next to him who's trying to describe this scene. And so, I think there's that. I think there's this opportunity missed. Look, if you're a filmmaker and somebody said to you, um, it's hard not to be involved in post, right? At all. Like if somebody said to you, "Great, you just shoot the thing, and then we'll take it from there. Good luck." You and a studio has the right to do that, okay? But you would like there'd be a pit in your stomach where you'd just be like, "Well, how do I know you're going to cut this thing at all?" Even if I just get to do the first edit and then somebody takes it from there, it changes. And there's notes and blah 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 blah. But if you never got to put your thumb on this thing at all, I think you'd be pretty sad. You know, well, that's what's happening basically. Okay, because for one whole audience, you know, you don't have your finger in this at all, and this isn't subtitling.
If you had the creative taken away from you and you now have no say, you have no seat at the table as a filmmaker in how your film is being represented, that's it's a thing that happens, but it's sad, and I think you lose vision, like you lose part of the story. And so, with subtitling, which is kind of the category that I think AD gets slugged in with, it's this accessibility finishing process for a movie. That's different because you're talking about the audience typically can see the screen because they're reading subtitles, right? So this is a sighted audience. Maybe they speak a different language, whatever, but the visuals are all still there. The cut's still there. The dialogue is still there. And you're just translating the dialogue from the actual words that are being said into these words. So the audio mix is there, the sound effects are there. Like it's a bit of a one for one, with that audience. And so but in this case, you're talking about an audience that is not seeing those words in the first place. They're not even seeing the image on the screen. And so I think even the way audio description is set up now, where it's sort of forced into this box where, number one, you need to fit this in these 4 seconds or 1 second or 2 seconds or whatever that this image is on the screen. God forbid there's an image on the screen, there's dialogue underneath at the same time. You don't get to talk, you know. And on top of that, you know, I don't, because there's no filmmaker involved in this thing, I think the descriptions themselves are not necessarily the way the filmmaker would describe it, you know, or the production designer or anybody else that's involved in the creative process, you know. And so I think, you know, I think there's an opportunity to, you know, paint that with a more colorful brush, you know, and I think whether that means, and again, I haven't worked through the details of any of this and I think it's a big initiative, right? But, you know, whether that means that the audio description track is just it's a separate movie experience that can be shared with a sighted audience and a non-sighted audience together, but it's not the same as the regular one that goes to the theater. Because if I need this thing to hold on this shot for an extra 30 seconds in order for the audio description to be up to par or up to where it needs to be, then let's do that. You know, this establishing shot or this, whatever this is, you know, if it takes a little bit longer to get the words out that makes somebody really makes this come to life, you know, for people, then why shouldn't we be figuring that out? You know, like that's kind of the thing. And I think just one funny parallel that I think this has to me is there's a lot of conversation right now about like VR filmmaking, okay, and AR filmmaking, but I'd say more VR than AR, okay. And you know, virtual reality stuff is you know, it's very first person. You go where you want to go, right? These games, you know, you're kind of like a soldier, or I mean, I did one that was a fishing one that was really cool. But you know, you're a first person, you're in this experience, and you're, you know, choosing which way you want to go, right? I can go here and I can go there and I can look up and I can look down and I can see this and see that. And as a filmmaker, the idea of VR filmmaking sounds idiotic to me, to be honest with you, like at first blush. And there's a lot of talk about it. And I think the only reason it sounds idiotic is I haven't figured it out. That's the only reason it sounds terrible to me. But the whole point is, if you're a filmmaker, if a character walks into a room, right, I might only want you to see their feet. I might only want you to see the sweat dripping off their corner of their brow, you know. And that's a choice that you've made as a filmmaker at that point to shoot it that way, because that's what's driving the narrative for you. That tells you something about that character. It tells you something about that moment. It's leading up to something. It's all part of this bigger thing that you're threading together. So in AR or VR, you know, if I'm in this thing and everybody can just look wherever you want to look, I don't care. Well, what if the murder happened over there and you're looking at the closet? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how that works yet, but that's only because I haven't figured out the puzzle yet. Okay. And I think in a weird way, I put this there. Okay. Because I think this is simpler, to be honest with you. I think this is a simpler solve, but I think it's something we haven't quite figured out the right mix. Right. And I think that's another point, like the audio mix. You know, I think the audio mix on an AD track should be very different from the audio mix of the normal track or the sighted track or whatever, you know, because, and tell me if this is a bad analogy, but I mean, I think radio shows of past and present, you know, I think, wait, don't tell me or whatever, you know, like NPR. I mean, there's some really cool radio shows, and over time those have been really cool, but they're geared towards an audience who's not seeing anything, and they already know that, you know. And so they, you know, and I'm not saying like cheap, cheesy, you know, DJ sound effects, but I'm saying if the thunder needs to come up, you know, or the car tire thumping needs to come up, or the whatever, like if we're not playing with that mix to help bring that thing forward, like you would in an audiobook, you know, like if we're not playing with that mix and thinking about that thing as part of the whole package. And we're not right now. Like right now, that's not a thing. Everybody's just, again, they're backing into something that exists already and saying, just put some descriptions in there for people who can't see, but make sure you do it in the exact amount of time that we already have allotted. Um, it and it's hard. Like there's you know, blind and low vision is not the only group that's probably disadvantaged to some degree by an entertainment experience. And that would go from everything from a movie to a theme park ride, right? I mean, there's all sorts of different things. And what's a radio show for a deaf person? How's that working out? I think there's not one problem to be solved, but probably 100. But again, this is all like as filmmakers, as entertainers, entertainment professionals, and period. That's the fun. Like take the problem and figure it out. Like, and it gets better and better and better and better, and then someday it's more better.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I'm hearing also, the way you're talking about opportunities with these problems, is that you recognize the problem. In other words, you're able to see the opportunity because you recognize that there is a problem. I'm wondering about the buildup of the awareness of this, that, as a visual medium, a lot of filmmakers would be put off by the idea of someone having access to their film, which is a film for visuals, even though the person can't see the visuals. That has been historically a hurdle that we need to educate our filmmakers on, like what that means.
Yeah, I mean, I can't put words in people's mouth. I just don't think most people are aware this is even happening. I think most filmmakers they're not thinking about this any more than they're thinking about the Yugoslavian language track that's going on this thing, which they're not involved in either. So I just now I think there's associated costs and there's associated process involved with taking on anything like this, and that's a consideration for a studio. I mean, that's a consideration of people's time, but I can certainly envision a role where instead of hiring an audio description service or whatever to provide this the same way you outsource transcription or subtitling or anything else or language or whatever. I think if you had an audio description producer who maybe was doing the heavy lifting of maybe has a one-on-one interview with the director or has some kind of communication with that person so that they can, okay, this is these are important moments, this is the important tone or whatever. And then, like you do anything else, come up with an outline. Here's what I want to do. Here's where I want to add things. I think we need another second of film in here, or another 30 seconds of film in here, or we need this, and piece that together the same way. Is that a lift? Sure, it's a lift. I mean, that's a big job, at that point. But I think that might be a fun starting place. It would just be, but it's a role, I can easily see, the studio perspective on it, which is, going to be, how many of these can we do? And do I need to have I made a rated R movie. Do I have to have an under 18 consultant too, in case the TV version of this thing comes out later and they do the like, do I got to bring a producer on to figure out what parts of the story we're losing or what, and maybe the answer is yes. Like, I don't know, so I think having the conversation is better than not having it, and right now I don't think it's being had, or at least not being had enough. And it probably starts with, I think right now the conversation's happening at the studio level in terms of this requirement thing. And it would be interesting to, roundtable this at the Directors Guild or the Writers Guild or the Producers Guild and, just get the creative angle on it. Just, hey, FYI, this is what's happening with the thing you're working on really hard. for a whole audience, this is what they're experiencing, from
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And just again, open up that conversation. Like just I don't think, the world's facing many challenges, but I don't think this is insurmountable. I think it's quite achievable that we can tackle this. Um, but it's going to start with more conversation. I don't think there's a magic button to hit tomorrow and fix this, but you know, a little lead by example. I'm hoping to lead by example with a couple projects I'm working on. Um, and there's a project I'm working on right now with AFB, American Foundation for the Blind. I can't disclose a whole lot of that because I've already signed NDAs and things. um, but I don't think it's going to be. It might not be best of breed, but it's going to be a step in the right direction. I think in terms of, uh, you know, because you lead by example, and then somebody else sees that and they're like, oh wow, okay, this is interesting. This is a different way of doing this. Um, and maybe that's cool. Maybe that leads to more discussion. And then maybe something like that is used as a conversation piece. If you go to the DGA and the PGA and the WGA and these conversations, maybe you need to show them something too. Like maybe you need to go, hey, we did one like this. Here's a couple minutes of this, and this is what this looks like. And again, just open it up.
Do you think that that is the current resistance, that there isn't an example of, let's call it inclusion prior to the film being done? That
Mhm.
is that the, do you think that that's the biggest resistance, that people not only are not aware of it, but they're also like, well, nobody else is doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably a few factors at play. I think
And to be
there's
clear, there are some filmmakers that are doing this. I don't want to say
yeah,
everybody. I want to be really clear. And majority. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt.
yeah. So I'd say there's a lot of creatives who are probably not aware that this is an issue that even needs to be tackled. So that's just awareness is one thing.
And we founded
Um,
Audio Description Awareness Day. Go on.
there you go. Tell me what to wear. Um, it's so that's one part of the equation. I think you know I mean, studios are just companies like any other company, right? They're focused on bottom line. They're trying to make a product. They're trying to make, a product that aligns with their brand, that is a quality product, but is also a reasonably priced product in terms of production, so that they can make a return. These are publicly held companies and they have shareholders, and people want to see a return on their money. So they're not looking to add expense into this. And so I don't want to say like that's a bad thing, because it's not a bad thing. That's responsible producing, really. Um, so there has to be a business case and a creative case, and that is the entertainment business, is the meeting of those two things. Like that's there's so much push and pull. I mean, I used to say like I would hire even on little, like I'd have a little commercial job or something like that, and they call me and like, hey, I want to hire your production company. And the first thing I would do is hire a line producer, give them all the money, and then say, hey, like, don't forget to pay me, but your job is now to fight with me, basically. And not in a bad way. It's just because I'm going to ask for everything. Like, I want 6 helicopters and a crane and whatever, and they're going to be like, you can't have that, and that's fine. Like, but it's that push and pull that's necessary. And so we can't be Pollyanna about it and just say, let's spend a whole bunch of money on something that is not going to have any return for the people who are making it. That's not fair either. You can't look at a company and say, you're making plenty of profits, you should, whatever. I mean, that's not fair. So, but that push and pull has existed in Hollywood forever, and we're still making really, really cool stuff. So I believe that if we just put this into the mix of that push and pull, that we're going to land on some stuff that makes sense. You know, and that's okay. Like, we'll figure that out. And everybody will walk away a little unhappy, but it'll be better.
Uh-huh. Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
All right. What other things can I dismay you about?
I'm so dismayed that this is a really great interview, that your perspective from your experience and from your expertise is so in alignment. with a lot of the initiatives that we're trying to talk about. And it personally means so much to me to be able to see how your experience of audio description and filmmaking can work together. And this interview alone is just how much you've taken to it and how seriously you take it. I think about the Television Academy. We worked for 6 years to be able to include audio description narrators to qualify for credits so that they can use their credits, be able to vote for the primetime Emmys. And the impact of that win feels spectacular, first of all, but it pales in comparison to what you're saying in this interview, because it is what you're saying is consistent with what audio description companies do, what the talents that do it, whether they're voicing or writing audio description, what the audiences are clamoring for, and the sense of asking for not asking, demanding and deserving parity to sighted audiences. That what you're talking about is working through it with the conversation and bringing that awareness and recognizing the opportunities. You started this whole conversation talking about recognizing opportunities, that it is that beautiful fight of what those opportunities are and recognizing it. Seeing what Apple's done with their inclusiveness of AD being in 9 different languages and being able to travel across the world and still be able to access it. To
Yeah,
having,
that's a great step in the right direction.
yeah, so it's like all these little things are starting to kind of popcorn up and bubble up and happen. And it's like this particular conversation just, it means the world to me, man. And
Yeah,
because of the impact of what you're saying.
yeah, again, like you're the one who made me aware of this in the first place, through the work that you were doing, audio description. And I'm not really much of a cause person anyway. Like I'm not out like campaigning for much of anything. But I just see this as a fun, creative challenge, to be honest with you. That's what it is. And there's nothing I like more than a good puzzle, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's all this is to me. Like it's I don't mean to make light of it or something, but that's what it is. It's just a thing that we're going to figure this out. I know that. I think it's just keeping that conversation going, recognizing that this isn't going to be a switch we're going to flip one day and it's all going to be there. I think I mean, what you're mentioning with Apple is terrific. That's great. And I think that looks to me just like, oh, we did this. Oh, and then we did this. Oh, and then we added that. It's just like any software program you have right now, right? I mean, like, Photoshop or PowerPoint or anything, right? It just kept getting better. Like they just
Yeah.
keep adding more functionality on it. It just keeps getting more user friendly and it's easier and it works with this other program now. And I can switch things back and forth and they all talk to each other. Like it's just that. And I think, you incorporate some of that thinking into this and then you turn around 10 years from now and you go, oh, wow. I don't think there's that day when you get to just we did it, we accomplished it,
Nice. Yeah, great example.
but I think if every day you look back and you're like, we're a step further than we were yesterday,
Yeah.
And when you and I are dead, then like there'll be another generation of people and they're going to take it even further, and that's cool. So like you started a ball rolling and somebody picked it up and went even past where you and I think we could go, right? And they're like, oh no, you guys are totally missing. But it's like building blocks,
Mm-hmm. Well, I got 2 more questions for you, and the final question is anything else you'd like to share? Before we get to that, when it comes to working with blind professionals in AD, talking about the value, the impact that blind professionals have had on you in AD and filmmaking, or what the value of that and the importance of that.
Yeah, I mean it's perspective. I mean, I can't put myself in somebody else's shoes that I'm not in. You know what I mean? And so there's just no way to substitute for that. And so I mean I'm big on open, honest communication. And I think no, I don't even, I know that I'm going to say stuff that is stupid or offensive or wrong, like along the way. I know I'm going to, but that can't stop me from having the conversation. And so people have gotta like get over the kid gloves of it all and just, you know, I mean, don't obviously nobody should intentionally try and be, inappropriate or mean or whatever, but use the best words you can and have the discussion. And if I'm saying the wrong thing, tell me I'm saying the wrong thing. I'm not going to say it anymore. Like I'm that guy. Like I always want to elevate communication, but there's no way that I'm ever going to have the perspective of somebody who is blind. Like that's it. They also don't know what I'm thinking and seeing. And there's already a really great opportunity to share knowledge. We come from different places. We're seeing things differently. And, the more you open up that dialogue, the better. But I think if you're going to do something for an audience and you're never going to consult with them and never work with them on doing it, then you're probably not going to hit it. Now, that said, if I was making a movie about fishing, I'm not turning over the camera to a fisherman, uh, because that's not what I'm looking for. But if I'm trying to get inside the head of a fisherman to find out, what are your struggles and how are you doing this every day? And how is, tell me about, the real life reality of who you are so that I'm representing that correctly. And that I'm, providing entertainment that's meaningful to that audience or whatever. If I did that in a vacuum and just read a book or something, it just wouldn't be the same, so it's just critically important, I think, to have that conversation, to make them an integral part of the team. And I think there's so many blind professionals that are capable and are talented and are able to work in so many different roles that would probably love the opportunity to work on all kinds of different projects. So, why not? Again, you and I have had this discussion, but this diversity, equity, inclusion thing, for some people that means X, and for other people it means something different. So it's some people it means race, some people it means gender and race, some people it means gender, race, and sexual identity. Some people it means, disability. Some people it only means one of those things. And I'm probably forgetting some other stuff. I mean, I think age is another one that we all need to talk about. Too young, too old, all of it. So worth a conversation as well. You and I will fix that problem next.
Working on it
as we're checking down the list.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
Wow. I don't know. Support entertainment.
There you go.
Enjoy entertainment. And whenever possible, create your own entertainment. You want to lead by example, you want to show us how it's done, go do it. Go make something. You got a story to tell, you got an iPhone, you're all set. There's don't wait for perfect, just go tell a story.
Very cool.
Like I should be giving advice to anybody.
How can we follow you? Social media, websites, anything that you feel comfortable sharing that's publicly available?
Yeah, I'm not a big self-promoter when it comes to social media stuff. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on there. And if you want to, the only social media thing I really care about, and I only care about it, not that I'm like advocating for a company or something, but my Instagram is at bill.sarine, Sarine, and that is pretty much just sunsets and ocean pictures because that's what I like. That's what brings me peace in the world. So go check that out if you're into such a thing.
Very cool. And I'm assuming we can do alt text on those Instagram images. We talked about alt text?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for doing this, buddy. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. Thanks so much for everything you shared. This is gold. It's
Yeah.
just gold.
Let me know when you're gonna call me back for pickups and inserts and stuff.
Very good.
All right. Peace and love. I'm signing off. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'll sign off. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thanks, buddy.